Okay, we're starting very, very shortly. We'll have, I'll ask cabinet members and panel members to introduce themselves and officers when they speak for the first time. Okay, so are we going live? Oh, we started. Okay, hello and welcome to Kirklees' Children's Scrutiny panel. Just start with the membership of the committee. We've got a new member, Ephraim Docrat, who's unfortunately has left us for now. Councillor Elizabeth Reynolds has been elevated to the cabinet, but is here with us now. New member.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Lawson, new panel member. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. And Councillor Viv Kendrick is here from the Cabinet as well. And online we have Councillor Richard Smith. And Councillor Docrat, who's with us. Again, I thought you disappeared off screen, so that's great. Good to see you, and good to welcome you as a new councillor to this panel, and congratulations on your by-election win. We have apologies. We have apologies from councillors.
Hi, we've got apologies from Oliver Gibson, Councillor Palmer and Councillor Anwar.
Thank you very much. Okay, so minutes of the previous meeting. I think am I the only one here who was there? So I would say that that's a correct, accurate previous meeting. Okay, as a member of the panel. So any comments at all on the last meeting? Those are passed. So, declaration of interests. Any members got any declarations of interest to declare at all in this meeting? I'm seeing shaking of heads online and shaking of heads from Councillor Lawson. Thank you. We will admit the public to this meeting. I don't believe we've received any deputations or petitions. I would be surprised if we had. We haven't got anybody to do public question time, and so we'll move straight into the performance data and a verbal update on the highlights from Joanne Sanders, Vicky Metheringham and Kieran Lord. So who's kicking off with a verbal update? We have questions from members, but are there any highlights that you'd like to bring forward to us? Kieran.
Good afternoon, thank you, Chair. I'm Kieran Lord, Service Director for Resources, Improvements and Partnerships. I'm just going to summarise some of the key data points of interest within the directorate areas that I have responsibility for. We've had a progressive increase in timeliness of our child protection ICPC data, and I wanted to share that that's a positive trend that continues. Something that we've been working on strategically over the summer in conjunction with the Children's Social Work team and our own IRO team as well. So I just wanted to share that positive data. On the other side of things, Councillor Cooper, I wanted to just mention that there has been, you'll note in the data, a slight reduction in the timeliness of the initial health assessments. It's something that we discussed in the Corporate Parenting Board and also in previous scrutiny. It's something that we would like to take away and consider in a little bit more detail to provide some updates, but it's something that we're working on with health colleagues to understand what we can do to support with that capacity. One of the other things that I just wanted to mention is in relation to our ratio of children in foster care placements. We continue to see an increase in our young people looked after by arrangements within family, so our SGO carers. This is a positive trend. We're looking to work at the best ways to keep children living within their natural ecologies and natural families. We're also seeing a slight change within the ratios of our children that are in foster care placements that are provided by independent foster care providers compared to those within our internal foster agents, our internal fostering services. And that's a real point of priority for ourselves, really. So we'll be looking in the coming months at our internal fostering provision and what we can do to support the increase in internal foster carers. Just the other point to raise is that for our core camps and our neurodevelopmental referrals, whilst we've seen a slight decrease in the requests, the timeliness of those areas has slightly increased. So that is in an area that we're working with our commissioning colleagues, very closely with our ICB colleagues within health, to better understand what we can do to support with the timeliness of those areas. So I'd welcome any questions from any panel members on those data points.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. I noted that caseloads appear to be slowly increasing. I say slowly, it does seem to be a slight increase. And I just wondered if we could have a quick talk through in this meeting about just what that picture looks like and about its effect on the working practice of staff, their workloads and their well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think that Vicky Metheringham probably provide a bit more of a detailed area across the overall caseload for social work services as part of the overall data, and indeed in terms of the impact on well-being and some of the measures that we're taking to address that. So, Vicky, if you don't mind, I'll defer to you, but please do bring me back in if you'd like some additional information from me.
Yeah, so good afternoon, Vicky Metheringham, Service Director, Child Protection and Family Support. It's a valid point with regard to caseloads. It's something that we're monitoring very closely. We know that our data booklet tells us that our staff have an average caseload of 19.7, but that doesn't really tell me anything about, one, how supportive staff are, and two, what that means for our social workers. So we do have weekly oversight of caseloads for social workers, and we analyse that. And we make sure that we're assured as senior managers that social workers are able to see children as frequently as they need to be seen, that social workers feel supported by their managers and that they're receiving case supervision. In terms of making sure that our social workers feel well supported, we've introduced a range of mechanisms to make sure that we're visible and that we're reaching out to social workers on a frequent basis. And we've introduced a range of opportunities to engage positively with social workers, to reward them for the things that they're doing really well, to thank them for the steps that they take, that they're working really, really hard. And we're using resources to ensure that we support them with regard to their emotional well-being and resilience on a frequent basis. A number of other mechanisms in place, such as time to talk sessions to ensure we can speak to social workers and get an honest understanding about what it feels like for our practitioners. But we are having a very close look at caseloads every single week. We've also introduced other panels to start to oversee cases closing. We know that we've got one particular area where there's a number of cases that do need to be closed. So just keep a very rigorous look at that all the time.
Okay, Councillor Lawson, do you want to follow up on that?
No, no questions. Just a comment that actually that last thing you said about the weekly view on caseloads and just keeping that overview on them. I think that's very reassuring. Thank you.
Something from me. One of the things we've learned is that we're pretty good on in-house provision of social workers. And I wonder if you can say anything to us about what we do to actually try and keep social workers engaged with Kirklees, and so we're not having to get expensive out of agency staff.
Yeah, I can answer that. So in Kirklees, we don't use any agency social workers. All of our social workers are permanent qualified staff. We have experienced some vacancies across our social work teams, and we've analysed that data. Very few of those vacancies relate to social workers leaving Kirklees. They generally relate to them being promoted or moving to another part of the service, such as to fostering, such as to the front door, or into advanced practitioner roles. We have a principal social worker that does meet with social workers and does an exit interview if they are leaving Kirklees to understand if there's anything we can learn and improve. We do really value the importance of having a social work structure that's consistent, because that supports our children much better if they have a social worker that they've got an established relationship with. So we try and work alongside our social workers to applaud their practice. We do frequent shout outs with our social workers. We give them a range of opportunities for training and development. We meet with social workers in various forums, informally and formally, and our principal social worker reaches out to social workers too. So it's about really engaging with practitioners and rewarding and thanking them, and making sure that they feel valued. We don't want to lose them to neighbouring authorities. It's too important. The other thing that we've done, we've really taken an approach to growing our own. We know that nationally the recruitment of social workers is really, really tricky. So we're well engaged with what's called the Frontline programme, and the Frontline programme enables us to employ a number of unqualified social workers. They have access to the Frontline employs social workers who have graduates who've done a degree elsewhere. Previously they would have had a 2-1. That's just been reduced now down to a 2-2. So they're graduates that want to become a social worker. They spend some time studying, and then they spend time in our social work teams, and when they qualify they stay with us. This year we've just seen 10 of our frontline practitioners moving into social work teams, and we've recruited another 10 onto the frontline programme. We also have apprenticeship opportunities. 4 of those have just gone out this year. That's been open to any member of Kirklees Council. If they want to become a social worker, they can do that through the apprenticeship route, and we continue to pay their salary. So lots of opportunities, and we're well engaged with the teaching partnership and universities, and work regionally with colleagues.
Thanks for that, Vicky. Having looked through the stats, we've got I see that there was a trend upwards between July 22 to July 23 on Section 47 volumes, number of those referrals coming in. I wonder if you can just explain briefly what Section 47 inquiries are, and if you could give some commentary on the trends.
Yeah, I can do that, and it's again it's an area that I'm really focusing our teams on. So when a child when a referral comes in and it's considered that a child's at risk of significant harm, our statutory responsibilities are that we have to convene what's called a strategy meeting. So that's a multi-agency meeting that needs to take place within 24 hours of that referral, that involves the police, health, social workers. And based on the information that we've received, we need to make a decision about what the next steps are. One of those next steps is what's called a Section 47 assessment. A Section 47 assessment is a process by which social worker seeks additional information from a variety of agencies that might include taking a child for a medical, that might involve a joint police interview, that might involve interviewing the parents. It needs to be completed within 5 working days of that strategy meeting, because it's only that assessment that can inform whether a child protection conference is needed. And you'll have seen from the data that this last month our performance has really improved in terms, Kieran's alluded to the timeliness of initial child protection conferences, because we've refocused our social workers to make sure they complete that Section 47 in 5 working days, and that they get the assessment ready for the child protection conference that takes place within 15 working days. So that's the process. We think there's probably too many Section 47 assessments that happen. They have risen. Last July they were at 92, and July 23 they were at 103. The preceding 2 months to that they were 176 and 150. There's only a small percentage of those Section 47s go to a child protection conference. So what that tells us is that there's too many Section 47 assessments that are happening. We've done a dip sample. We've recognised there's some learning. So with some section 47 assessments that were happening unnecessarily. And I think that might be why that's led to that reduction in July. It'll be interesting to see the August data to see if that's reduced again. It is something that we're focusing on and monitoring. We don't want to be too dictatorial to say don't do any more, because it is an assessment that does need to be done. But there's probably just a few too many happening. I think what's happening is that children are already on a child protection plan. Some children are going through another section 47 because another significant incident's occurred, rather than using an existing process to manage that child protection concern, if that makes sense.
I think what does make sense is the fact that the information is guiding action, and that you're looking at it, and it's useful information that you use to make changes to the way that you approach it. So that's really encouraging, I think. So I'm just it's an impressive amount of data that's collected, and quite reassuring in lots of ways. Okay, do we want to move over to the education side of things, and Jo?
Good afternoon, I'm Joanne Sanders, I'm Service Director for Learning and Early Support. We're just in the process at the moment, Chair and Scrutiny Panel, of looking at last year's outcomes data. Thank you for the opportunity to share some unvalidated data in the informal part of the meeting. As you know, we'll be keen to do some analysis, because that will inform what we do and how we work with our school system. So we will be able to share that more widely when some of those things have been validated. However, we are 3 weeks into a new school term now. The information that you've got and have been able to scrutinise takes up until July. So we're now balancing what happened last year with what is starting to happen in the new academic year. For example, things like children who are relatively home educated. I think we spoke a little bit last time how we had a key focus this year on inclusion and a real push to make sure that we were minimising across the system suspensions and exclusions, and that will be a key focus for the partnership board. You can see the information there for performance across our school system for last year. And then attendance, there's been a real focus on good attendance, and it'd be something, I guess, that we'll be focusing on, encouraging the highest levels of attendance, at least at national. So that's probably as much as I want to say this time, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so Elizabeth.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow on from what Jo had said, really, put a little bit of context around this as well. Kirklees is an incredibly proactive player within education, and I think with our Kirklees Futures, there's been some big steps forward, little steps too. The idea of improving standards and improving outcomes across the board, not just exams, for all of our children. Also building that, it's been very busy building on the challenges of COVID and post-COVID, and particularly within early years, and the effect as those children go through school is going to be interesting to look at. There is such a lot of work going on. I would like to comment on the commitment of all our schools to improve outcomes wherever. It's the word flavour you use, whatever flavour schools they are, whether they're academy trusts or whether they're local authority schools. There is a real commitment from those schools, I think, to pursue this agenda. We're all very aware of the challenges inherent in the system, as well as the challenges that we've got around us. And I think facing those challenges head on is really important. And I think we've got a good basis to go forward this year. So I've been really pleased with the discussions the last couple of weeks as well. So we've got a lot to do, okay. But we're on it. We're there. Thanks.
Okay, councillors online or John Lawson. Any particular comments? No, thank you. One or two from me. Really, just looking at one of the trends that we've got coming forward. We've got less people generally, well, nationally certainly, who are looking at going on to university, and just wondering about what the impact of that might be on things like vocational courses, and any commentary we might have about that at all.
Thank you. I'm going to ask my colleague Nina. Nina, who leads our post-16, if she wouldn't mind stepping in and answering that question. Nina, would you mind?
Hello, Nina Barnes, Post-16 and Adult Learning Strategic Lead. It's a valid question to ask at the minute. A number of our Post-16 institutions are currently revising their curriculum offer. Programmes of study previously have included A-levels, vocational qualifications, applied qualifications, and a number of the vocational qualifications will finish this year. So that means moving forward there will be an option of A-levels, traditional A-levels for students to take, or T-level qualifications only. Apprenticeships is another route that students could take, but not one that would be traditionally offered in our school sixth forms. So moving forward, potentially there is going to be an impact on the number of students that go to university. However, what we do see in our more academic sixth forms and colleges that we work with is that if a traditional A-level route is taken, a high majority of those students, and we're talking on average each year around 70%, 80% do move on into university places.
Okay.
So we'll monitor that moving forward.
Thank you. That's great. Another area, unauthorised absences. Just wondering whether we hear nationally that there's an issue with unauthorised absences of people taking their children out of school for holidays, and possibly linked to the cost of living crisis and things of that nature. Just wondering if we're monitoring that data and if there's any commentary we can make upon that.
Thank you, Chair. So to answer, yes, we do take some very robust monitoring. So we have developed a dashboard that monitors daily attendance for our youngsters. We're able to look at what that looks like for some of our more vulnerable youngsters, so those with education, health and care plans. For those youngsters who may be looked after by the local authority, we can observe that by national curriculum year to see if there are any trends. And we can absolutely see what that looks like in different geographical areas of Kirklees. So when we're looking back at the previous academic year and we analyse reasons for absence, the vast majority of the recorded reasons why youngsters were away from school is absolutely down to illness. So I think that's reassuring. In terms of there is the next sort of the next highest category is about unauthorised absence, but actually a much lower number is around unauthorised holidays. So I think what you're suggesting in terms of those youngsters who were taken out of school to perhaps go on holiday is actually a smaller number. That said, we work really closely with the school system. We've got a really strong education safeguarding offer in terms of tracking youngsters, working with schools if there's persistent absenteeism, working with parents in the first instance, but then if that needs to go to more stringent measures like penalty notices, and I suppose in the most extreme cases, parental attendance orders, that's done in a very co-productive, robust way, but we seek to work early intervention before we get into more legal challenges. We absolutely will keep a focus on this. There are new attendance duties for the local authority from September. So it is an area we are happy to come back and do some further work with Scrutiny on when we've got a little bit more data, if that's okay.
Thank you. That's great. Good to see some of the information about early years and here and the improvements that have been happening here. Just wondering about nursery provision and whether that has a positive impact on early years, where some schools do have it and it feeds into the system and some don't. So just wondering if there's any commentary on that, whether we've got some data on that area.
Thank you, Chair. Emma Brayford, Senior Kirklees Learning Partner. We do have information with regards to how our children progress through the school system. What we do want to be able to do is to look more closely about the impact of mobility when children move from settings into mainstream schools and into our academy system, and look at how that impacts on the children's progress. Within that, there's the mobility that happens naturally, year on year and throughout the year, that will have an impact on children's attainment and progress. So it's something that we are more than happy to take away and come back at a later date when we've got our validated figures.
That's marvellous. Interesting. Thank you. Councillor Kendrick.
I just wanted to sort of refer to earlier when you said, Chair, that there was an impressive amount of data, and there is, and it's well explained by colleagues. But for me, historically, one can't rely on just data on the surface and all looks well with the world, which is why I spend a lot of time out with different teams and services, and also meet with young people and care leavers. And it's actually something I would welcome Scrutiny's involvement with. You know, it helps triangulate what you see in data, its true validity, and I think that's an important point to make.
Yes, no, I think one of the things we've been trying to do is get involved with visits and things. We'll see how those develop. We did have a number of things there. We'll come back to that. Next item on our agenda is pre-decision scrutiny. So cabinet decisions on the horizon. The panel will consider any potential areas of pre-decision scrutiny in accordance with cabinet decisions related to children and young people. So, Kieran.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. We have a paper that will be discussed at Cabinet next week, which Cabinet members will be familiar with regard to the redesign of our short breaks and respite facilities for children and young people and their families with where the children and young people have disabilities. We're not seeking pre-decision scrutiny on this because the paper is about seeking consultation. That consultation will include the involvement of members as well as those that access the service and staff members, but it's just to put it on the horizon that is an item that will be coming forward for Cabinet in the coming week. So
on that item, are we, in terms of the people who are going to be using the service, those young people, are we, what are we expecting the impacts of that decision to be?
What we're seeking at this stage is permission to consult with that group. What we are hoping that the consultation will lead to is a better integration of services that provide, in line with our council's place-based approach, services that meet the needs of children, young people and their families in a locality that's nearer and better for them to access at a time that's better for them, while simultaneously looking to make efficiencies by way of integration of services. This is a proposal that we would be making irrespective of the council's current financial position, but this is what children and families have been asking us for. And we've had some learning from provision of services, for example, during the period of COVID, where we worked more innovatively, more creatively to be able to provide services for children and young people closer to where families live. So we would benefit from the views of our children and young people, our staff members and interested members of the public to support with what the impact may be, both positive and in terms of some of the challenges in that area.
Councillor Kendrick, what feedback have we been getting from families about this?
I suppose really it's what occurred during COVID. We couldn't have some of these very vulnerable because of health conditions and what have you going to a set place during lockdown, and it was the innovative ways that staff came up with to provide short breaks or a little bit of respite or whatever in people, in and around people's homes and in localities, that actually families have said, hey, this is a lot better. And I don't know if you've ever asked yourself as a counsellor, but, you know, we're all aware of after-school clubs around schools. And have you ever asked, where are the after-school clubs around special schools? Because there are none. And isn't that strange to have all that building that's really accessible and equipment, and it's not exploited? And nothing has been agreed as yet. We want to really talk to all the people involved and all partners, including schools as such, but it's looking for doing things in a better way, really, rather than transporting people across Kirklees for quite long distances to a place, and perhaps it really doesn't meet need as it should.
I see Councillor Smith has got his hand up. Councillor Smith.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, just the point that Councillor Kendrick made about the special schools. I'm not an expert in this, but I used to have a special school near me, and most of the time I saw kids were transported there through minibuses and various other things. I was just wondering whether that might be one of the reasons why that's the case, that mostly these children are needed to be leaving at the same time as each other because of the transportation issues, because they're not generally living in the same locality as kids who go to other schools. I don't know. Does that make sense? I don't know. It's just an observation. I just wondered if that might be the reason for it.
Kieran. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor.
I saw Kieran first. It's okay.
We may give a similar answer. I think that's exactly one of the reasons why we are seeking to consult. What we know is that currently the provision is focused within a particular geographical area in terms of what we provide as a local authority. It's localised around the Murfield area and Ravensthorpe. So actually what we're looking to consult over is that provision closer to where families live at a time that suits them. We know that if there is a provision for an after-school club, say for example at 3:30, that's difficult for children and families to access post the end of school if they need to travel from one area of Kirklees to another, and families have told us that. That doesn't just have implications for the children and families, but as discussed in our informal meeting earlier, it has implications for our transport system and our air quality, amongst other matters. So the consultation is not just there to provide the outcomes, better outcomes for children and families accessing them services, but about parity across the geographical region of Kirklees.
Councillor Kendrick.
Very much the same thing I was going to say, but Councillor Smith is absolutely right. It will be reasons that particular transport's put on is leaving the school at that time, but it can't be past our ability to do something different. But we need to talk to all the people involved, the families and the educational establishments.
Just a quick comment on what you said about special schools and after-school clubs, that there is voluntary sector and third sector provision for it, which people use. I could declare an interest because my wife works at one, so I better note that. But sometimes I think we've got to look at what people want to do, what's out there, and it's not necessarily staying at the school, I think, and so just a quick comment on that. Yeah, Councillor Kendrick.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, interestingly, Tom Brailsford, the Director of Children's Service, and I visited a local youth club, which is probably within your ward recently, that is very accessible and provides particular provision at a tea time and in an evening for older young people. And we see that as part of the possible picture, depending on what young people, children and their families want.
I think one particular issue is a lot of these organisations are now coming to ward councillors looking at ward budgets for their funding, and some of those ward budgets are haven't got much money left in them, and so you know, going forward, you're wondering about the viability of some of those organisations, and if our funding pressures might become their funding pressures.
We were visiting and looking at, not with a view for getting a freebie.
Sure.
We accept that, you know, resources are involved.
Yeah.
It's all to look at, it, which is why I think it should be of great interest, perhaps, to Scrutiny, and I would welcome the help with that as we go along.
Sure. And I wasn't suggesting you were at all. Yeah. Okay. Right. So, if there's nothing else on this item, we'll move on to feedback from the Corporate Parenting Board, which I was at. I mean, one of the issues that came up at Corporate Parenting Board when we were looking at looked after children was the whole issue of children for the first time going into their own homes and managing their own home for the first time and being part of a community. And one of the areas that I raised was about the support that we provide to enable young people to be part of, not just, if you like, manage their own lives, but be part of a community. You know, the sort of basic things like putting the bins out and being and thinking of neighbours and being aware of that. That was an area that I raised during the meeting. Another area that we looked at was the way that children's homes are inspected and the regime that and the way that they're measured. Any thoughts on that, Kieran, at all that you'd like to make?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think what I'd like to just share is that we have certainly been developing improved relationships with our colleagues within Ofsted in recent months. We're meeting regularly with them to better understand in an evolving landscape what their expectations are and how that matches with the realities of providing provision in residential homes for what are often our most vulnerable children and often those children that are displaying some of the most challenging behaviours. So we discussed within Corporate Parenting Board some of the individual outcomes of some of those inspections, but I think more broadly what we're interested in is working closely with Ofsted to ensure that we are both meeting the needs of our young people, which is our most important priority, but doing so within the confines of an inspection system that sometimes feels or has felt that we are being assessed on the level of risk of our children rather than our ability to manage that level of risk. So we've been having some robust conversations with colleagues regionally and ensuring that we are making sure that we're working very closely with them on that. The other point to make, I would say, is that we have a number of children's homes that are currently open and 2 that are due to be open very soon. And additionally, we'll be working very closely with our colleagues within Ofsted about the registration of those homes, ensuring we're getting the right matching to bring home to our locality where we've got children that are currently in out of area or external residential placements, ensuring that we match those children appropriately to that provision. And simultaneously we'll be looking at providing further opportunities for what we call smaller homes. So these may have previously been known to members as satellite home provisions. So smaller homes that could be associated to our wider residential estate that could provide even more individualised home environments for our children. So it's an evolving landscape, and I think that we would appreciate further kind of scrutiny involvement as we start to develop that offer in the coming months.
Thank you. Okay. Another area I raised was about the membership of the Corporate Parenting Board, which was just about kinship carers and whether we ought to be looking for somebody from the kinship carers to be on the board. And I think that was going to be looked at, wasn't it, as an area that we could do. Any other comments from people who are at Corporate Parenting Board at all? You were Councillor. Sorry, John.
The discussion that you referred to right at the beginning of this item I thought was very valuable. We could have spent quite a long time on that discussion, there were lots of good ideas coming out. Personally, I was talking about, is there a residential option for care leavers to explore, that we can get care leavers to sort of just experience, have a taster, as it were, of independent living. I think the valuable thing that came out of that conversation was that the wealth of activity that was obviously going on in the background with officers, that all of these things were in view and this discussion was being had. And I think that was really quite interesting. There was a lot of creativity going on in there. I can see Elizabeth's putting her hand up. I'll make way.
Councillor Reynolds.
No, it was okay. And I was just going to say, nobody's mentioned the foster carers here. And I think that's a massive part of what they do. Massive part of what they do. And I think the officers and the foster carers work really closely on that. So it's just that nobody had mentioned them, and actually that's what they do, you know.
It's an important part of it, and thank you very much for raising that. Okay. I think one of the things that did come out of the discussion was that highlighting the fact that we do provide support to people up to the age of 25 once they're around. So you know that's quite important. You know, in terms of, because apart from anything else, a successful tenancy. An unsuccessful tenancy will cost the council an awful lot of money, apart from anything else. So providing that support throughout, even if it's light touch, I think is important for those people who were looked after children and now young people. Okay. Nothing more on corporate parenting board? No? So the work programme and agenda plan for 23-24, we've got this going forward. Is there any comments on our agenda plan, or any adjustments that people would want to make to it, or any things that we're missing that we really ought to be paying some attention to? Oh, Councillor Reynolds. Which trick are we missing?
I'm not sure, and I'm not actually sure how to raise this in the same way. I'll be absolutely straight and honest. I was with you. I was a member of the Children's Scrutiny panel. There were only 2 of us at that meeting, along with Helen, due to all kinds of other commitments of other people. Some of the items that are on there do not reflect the conversations that I think we had, and I think could do with a little bit of conversation away from here, maybe, as to some of the language used, maybe, but definitely some of the priorities that weren't quite what I thought we'd come up with on that. And I know there was lots of sticky notes going on, a lot of pieces of paper, and I have tried to delve back and have a look to see what we talked about. But I think there were some that I think we need to clarify.
I would value your input if we've missed something along the lines. So
yeah.
You know, more than happy to if we've missed something, more than happy to hold my hands up as chair and see if we can rectify anything that needs doing. Okay. Anything more before we close the meeting? Okay. Oh, Councillor Lawson.
At this stage, I'll probably just give my apologies for the next meeting. I will not be able to attend. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for this. Okay. Anything more? Gone. Thank you all for your attendance and your contributions today. Much appreciated.